Today we are examining an interesting historical comparison that often appears in discussions about the Iraqi dinar and the future of Iraq's monetary system. The topic involves Kuwait's response to stolen currency following the Gulf War, and whether a similar approach could ever be considered in Iraq. This is a subject that frequently generates speculation among currency followers, but our goal today is to separate historical facts from modern-day assumptions, and carefully analyze what such a scenario would actually mean from an economic, legal, and monetary policy perspective. The comparison begins with a real historical event. During the Gulf War, in the early 1992s, large quantities of Kuwaiti currency were reportedly stolen when Iraqi forces occupied Kuwait. After Kuwait regained control of its financial institutions, authorities took extraordinary steps to protect the integrity of their national currency. Among those actions was the invalidation of certain banknotes connected to the theft. By identifying specific serial number ranges associated with stolen notes, Kuwait prevented many of those banknotes from being redeemed or exchanged. As a result, individuals who possessed those particular notes found that they had become effectively worthless, because the government refused to recognize them as valid legal tender. This historical event is important because it demonstrates that under extraordinary circumstances, a sovereign nation has the authority to determine the legal status of its own currency. Governments and central banks possess the legal power to withdraw banknotes from circulation, introduce new designs, replace existing series, or invalidate specific notes when necessary. These decisions are generally made to protect financial stability, maintain confidence in the currency, combat counterfeiting, or respond to exceptional national security concerns. Whenever this historical example is discussed, many Iraqi dinar observers naturally begin asking whether Iraq could ever implement something similar. Over the past 2 decades, Iraq has faced numerous challenges including wars, political instability, terrorism, sanctions, corruption, and widespread smuggling. During those years, significant amounts of Iraqi dinars have reportedly circulated outside the formal banking system. Some analysts believe large quantities of physical currency have been hidden, smuggled across borders, or stored outside banks rather than participating in normal economic activity. This raises an interesting theoretical question. If a government believed substantial amounts of its currency had been stolen, illegally accumulated, or permanently removed from legitimate circulation, could it eventually invalidate portions of that currency through legal procedures similar to those used by Kuwait decades ago? The answer is that such a possibility exists in theory, because every sovereign nation controls its own currency. However, theory and practical policy are two very different things. There is currently no official announcement indicating that Iraq intends to invalidate existing Iraqi dinar banknotes in the manner described by this historical comparison. It remains a hypothetical discussion, rather than an announced monetary policy. Understanding this distinction is extremely important, because financial markets respond to official policies, legislation, and central bank decisions rather than speculation alone. One of the central arguments behind this discussion concerns Iraq's money supply. Many economists emphasize that the amount of currency circulating within an economy plays a major role in determining monetary policy. A larger money supply generally requires careful management to control inflation, maintain exchange rate stability, and support economic growth. Critics of rapid exchange rate appreciation often point toward Iraq's sizable money supply as one reason why dramatic changes would require extensive planning and structural reforms rather than occurring overnight. Supporters of alternative viewpoints sometimes argue that the officially reported money supply may not fully reflect how much currency is actively participating in Iraq's economy. Their reasoning is that substantial amounts of physical cash may be sitting outside banks, hidden in private storage, circulating through informal markets, or located outside Iraq entirely. From an economic perspective, there is an important distinction between total currency issued and effective circulating currency. Currency that remains outside normal banking channels can still legally exist, but its impact on daily financial activity may differ from money actively moving through businesses, banks, and consumer transactions. Central banks pay close attention to these differences because monetary policy depends not only on how much money exists, but also on how quickly that money changes hands throughout the economy. Economists refer to this concept as the velocity of money. When money remains idle for extended periods, its economic influence differs from money constantly flowing through wages, investments, purchases, and lending. This is one reason why Iraq has spent years encouraging citizens to deposit money into banks, expand electronic payment systems, increase financial inclusion, and reduce dependence on cash transactions. These reforms are intended to strengthen monetary control while improving transparency across the financial system. If larger portions of the economy operate through banks instead of cash, policymakers gain better visibility into liquidity conditions and can implement monetary policy more effectively. Returning to the Kuwait comparison, one of the reasons Kuwait successfully invalidated stolen currency was that the theft occurred during a clearly identifiable historical event involving specific banknote series. Authorities could identify affected serial numbers and establish legal justification for refusing reimbursement. Iraq's situation would be significantly more complicated. Over more than 2 decades, Iraqi currency has circulated through countless legal and illegal channels. Banknotes have been exchanged domestically, transported internationally, deposited into banks, withdrawn again, traded through currency exchanges, and used in millions of everyday transactions. Separating legitimately held banknotes from illegally obtained currency would represent an enormous operational challenge. Modern central banks generally seek to preserve confidence in the national currency. Confidence depends upon the public, believing that legal banknotes will remain acceptable for payments and exchanges according to established regulations. If authorities unexpectedly invalidated large portions of circulating currency without careful planning, it could create uncertainty among households, businesses, and investors. For that reason, when countries replace currency or withdraw older banknotes, they usually provide extensive transition periods, public communication campaigns, and clear exchange procedures, allowing legitimate holders to convert their money. This gradual approach helps preserve financial stability while minimizing disruption. Another point frequently raised in these discussions concerns international investors who own Iraqi dinar outside Iraq. Some commentators argue that international holdings represent only a small portion of total Iraqi dinar, compared with currency believed to exist inside Iraq or outside the banking system. Whether or not those estimates are accurate, the important principle remains that official monetary decisions are made based on national economic objectives, rather than individual investor expectations. The Central Bank of Iraq's primary responsibilities include maintaining price stability, supporting financial sector development, managing foreign exchange reserves, supervising banks, and protecting confidence in Iraq's financial system. Any future policy involving banknotes would almost certainly be evaluated according to those objectives, rather than speculation surrounding foreign currency holders. This brings us to another important issue, often overlooked in public discussions. Reducing the money supply is not as simple as making banknotes disappear. Economists distinguish between physical currency and the broader money supply, which includes bank deposits, electronic balances, lending activity, and other financial assets. Even if certain physical notes were removed from circulation, broader monetary conditions would still depend on banking activity, government spending, credit growth, fiscal policy, and overall economic performance. In other words, invalidating some currency alone would not automatically transform the economy or fundamentally change exchange rate policy. Exchange rates are influenced by numerous interconnected variables, including foreign exchange reserves, trade balances, oil revenues, inflation expectations, government budgets, productivity, investor confidence, and monetary credibility. Iraq possesses one significant advantage compared with many emerging economies. Its economy is supported by substantial oil exports, which generate foreign currency earnings and contribute to official reserves. Strong reserves provide central banks with greater flexibility in defending exchange rate stability and managing external shocks. However, reserve strength alone does not determine future exchange rate decisions. Authorities must also consider inflation, domestic liquidity, banking sector development, fiscal sustainability, and broader economic reforms. This explains why international organizations frequently emphasize structural reforms alongside monetary policy. Banking modernization, anti-money laundering compliance, payment system development, digital finance expansion, tax collection improvements, customs modernization, and private sector growth all contribute to creating conditions for long-term currency stability. These reforms typically require years rather than weeks. When viewed through this broader lens, the discussion about stolen currency becomes one component of a much larger economic picture. Even if authorities wished to identify illegally held banknotes, they would still need legal frameworks, technological systems, verification procedures, international cooperation, and public confidence. Without those elements, implementation could prove extremely difficult. Another consideration involves Iraq's ongoing efforts to strengthen financial transparency. Over recent years, Iraq has introduced measures aimed at improving banking oversight, expanding digital payments, monitoring international transfers, and enhancing regulatory compliance. Such reforms seek to reduce opportunities for illicit financial activity, while integrating Iraq more closely with the global financial system. As transparency improves, authorities may gain better visibility into currency movement without necessarily invalidating existing banknotes. This represents a more gradual and institution-focused approach, consistent with international banking standards. Some observers also point to historical currency replacements conducted by other countries. Throughout modern history, governments have occasionally introduced redesigned banknotes, featuring enhanced security features, to combat counterfeiting or improve durability. During these transitions, older notes are generally exchanged through banks over specified periods, before eventually losing legal tender status. These processes differ substantially from emergency invalidation of stolen currency, because the objective is modernization, rather than punishment of criminal activity. Understanding these distinctions helps avoid confusion between normal currency replacement and extraordinary responses to theft or conflict. For Iraqi dinar followers, the key takeaway is that historical examples can provide useful context, but should not be interpreted as evidence of imminent policy changes. History often offers valuable lessons, yet each country's economic circumstances remain unique. Kuwait's experience occurred within a very specific geopolitical environment, following military occupation, and involved clearly identifiable stolen banknotes. Iraq today faces different economic realities, different institutional structures, and different policy priorities. Therefore, direct comparisons should be approached carefully. In the short term, discussions like these may continue generating debate among analysts, economists, and currency observers. However, markets generally place greater weight on official announcements from the Central Bank of Iraq, enacted legislation, published monetary reports, and measurable economic indicators. Those are the developments most likely to influence expectations regarding Iraq's financial future. In the medium term, Iraq's progress will likely depend on continued banking reform, diversification beyond oil, improved investment conditions, infrastructure development, stronger governance, and sustained macroeconomic stability. Each of these factors contributes to long-term confidence in the Iraqi economy. For long-term observers of the Iraqi dinar, patience and careful analysis remain essential. Major monetary developments rarely occur in isolation. Instead, they typically emerge from years of coordinated economic reforms involving fiscal policy, banking modernization, institutional strengthening, regulatory improvements, and international cooperation. Rather than focusing exclusively on theoretical scenarios, it is often more productive to monitor measurable progress in these underlying areas. Economic history demonstrates that stable currencies are built upon strong institutions, disciplined monetary policy, credible central banking, and sustainable economic growth. These foundations generally matter more over time than any single policy action involving physical banknotes. Ultimately, the discussion surrounding Kuwait's invalidated currency serves as an interesting reminder that governments possess significant authority over their monetary systems. It also illustrates how exceptional historical events can produce extraordinary policy responses. At the same time, it highlights why careful analysis is necessary. Before assuming that one country's historical experience will automatically apply to another country's current circumstances. For Iraqi dinar followers, maintaining a balanced perspective means distinguishing between historical precedent, theoretical possibilities, official policy, and confirmed economic developments. That approach helps reduce unnecessary speculation, while encouraging informed understanding of how modern monetary systems operate. As always, The most reliable information comes from official institutions, published economic data, central bank communications, and verifiable government decisions, rather than rumors or unsupported assumptions. Iraq continues moving through an important period of financial modernization, and the pace of reform will likely remain one of the most significant factors, influencing long-term confidence in its economy. Whether future policy involves banking modernization, payment system expansion, enhanced financial transparency, or broader monetary reforms, each development should be evaluated based on official evidence and its overall impact on economic stability rather than speculation alone. Thank you for watching today's analysis. If you appreciate responsible, factual and balanced coverage of Iraqi dinar developments and Iraq's economy, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video so you never miss future updates. As always, this content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be considered financial, investment, or trading advice, and viewers should conduct their own research and consult qualified financial professionals before making any investment decisions.